Christmas has just been and you may have picked yourself up one of these, the DJI Osmo Action 4. Now I'm going to tell you my personal settings I use when I'm out vlogging. Now this first one isn't particularly a setting on the camera that you've got to think about, but it is definitely something that you need to be mindful of when you are out and about, and that's going to be lighting. With these cameras, ideally you want to try and situate yourself facing the sun or at a kind of 45-degree angle. Now if you are doing it with the sun behind you, the camera has to work extra hard and the footage can become slightly grainy. So just being mindful of your area and your surroundings and where you're filming, how you're filming, is do it so that the sun is facing you. Obviously it was always helpful wearing sunglasses like this, I'd be squinting all the time, or just kind of offset from you. Obviously this isn't always something that you can achieve, especially if you are kind of in an urban area and you're cutting around and you're going in between the buildings or you're going in and out of buildings or anything like that. But if you are in an open space, outside, something to be mindful of. As I said, lighting is great if you can control it and you are stationary, but right now I'm walking in a certain direction, the sun's behind me. It is what it is. So my next setting that you want to be looking at is the color profile. Now with the Action 4, the camera does a really good job in the normal color profile, which we're in right now. If this is your first time with this camera, leaving it in normal is absolutely fine. You don't need to go to manual settings throughout the camera to get any decent footage. However, with pretty much every camera out there, if you do want the best quality from it, you are going to have to start putting certain settings into manual, and color profile is one of them. So the Action 4, you've either got normal or D-Log M 10-bit. D-Log is going to give you the most flexibility when it comes to editing the footage later on and color grading. So let's swap over to that now. And here we go then. This is now D-Log. And from a user's perspective, when you are looking at the camera, it will look flat, it will look quite washed out and grey, but that's okay. In the editing process, that's when you then bring back all the colors. And it is completely up to you whether you do use normal or D-Log. Personally for me, if you are in situations where the scenery isn't going to change consistently, then using the D-Log, you can get a decent color grade across your footage. But again, that's probably user error. It's probably the fact that I haven't actually used it enough and I'm not confident with it. And that's cool. We're all here to learn. Practice makes perfect. And that is one thing that I'm going to do throughout 25. I'm going to start using the manual settings more on all my cameras, just so I can try and enhance my skill set. Setting number 3 we're going to look at then is the auto white balance. Again, you can leave it in auto or you can put it in manual. It's kind of down to you and the areas you're going to be filming. Are you going to be, again, going in and out of light and dark scenes, or are you stationary? Are you filming yourself in one location? You can set auto white balance and you can leave it. Right now I've got it in auto white balance. I'm obviously going in and out of the shade from the buildings. And again, the camera does a really good job, in my opinion, of transitioning between the light and the dark scenes, where actually, personally, I'm probably more than happy leaving it on auto. But for you guys, let's put it in manual. Again, a lack of skill when it comes to knowing what setting on the Kelvin chart to put the manual white balance. If you do struggle with it, what you can do with the camera is have it in auto, face it into the scene that you're going to be filming in, and then quickly press onto manual, and then it will kind of set it for you. One of the reasons the Action 4 does a really good job at selecting the right white balance for you when it's in auto is that it's actually got a temperature sensor on the front of the camera. For me personally, I don't use horizon balancing on the stabilization. So a setting that some people kind of overlook is the grid lines. Now, when you turn the grid lines on, you can see it on the front and the rear screen. So that means that I can try and keep the camera as level as possible by keeping the lines dissecting my eyes when I'm talking. But also, when I'm then trying to film something, I can use the lines of whatever it is I'm filming to make sure it's leveled off. Again, it's a simple setting, like I said, probably most people don't use, but it can be very helpful. When you first get this camera, there'll be a setting called sharpness and noise reduction, and they will tend to be set at 0 for both. I find sometimes the image to be kind of too sharp, too digitally sharp. So for me, I turn noise reduction to -1 and sharpness to -2, because sharpness is something I can add in later on when I'm editing the footage if I wanted to. With the camera's frames per second, I personally use 30 frames. I've used 24 in the past, and sometimes I felt the footage was just a little bit jittery. But again, personal preference. Like 24 to 30, people probably wouldn't be able to really tell unless there's a lot of fast moving action within the shot. But if you're doing a vlog, POV style, whatever it be, there might not be too much moving in the shot anyway, so you could film in 60 frames and people wouldn't be able to tell. The next thing is the field of view. Now, the Action 4 has got 3 different field of views. It's got standard, D-warp, it's got wide and ultra wide. I like to film in either standard, that would be the most preferable option for me, or at a push wide. Now, I wouldn't film ultra wide when it comes to vlogging. It just stretches everything a little bit too much, and especially if you are walking around buildings or anything quite close, obviously the wider the field of view, the more stretched and kind of distorted those lines, those buildings are going to be, and the more noticeable it's going to be. So having it in standard D-warp will have the best visual effect when you're watching back the footage. So far this whole video has been filmed in standard, but let's whack it over to wide just so you can see the difference. And here it is then, this is wide. The times I would use wide is if I just want to increase what you guys are seeing, if I want to have a little bit more scenery in the shot than just me. Obviously the other thing you could do, I've got you guys on a selfie stick, is I could just put you guys further away from me using the selfie stick and then keep it in standard. Depending where it is you're walking, if you're walking around a town or you're going hill walking, stabilization is going to be a setting you're going to have a little play around. Now again, the camera has good basic stabilization when it comes to rock steady, and that's kind of level 1 of the camera stabilization. You can turn it off. Personally, I wouldn't recommend it. Rock steady crops in the least, but actually it gives really good stabilization. Like I've said, I'm just walking around the town, got a selfie stick, but I know this footage is going to be decent. The other stabilization settings are either rock steady plus or horizon balancing, but each of those will crop in a little bit further. And then horizon balancing does what it says on the tin. And lastly then is going to be the exposure of the camera. Now, you've heard me say it multiple times throughout this video, how the camera does a really good job at it. And again, leaving this in auto exposure, camera does a fantastic job. Now, like I said, if you aren't filming fast moving objects, cars, whatever, people, this whole footage has been in auto. However, if you do want to get that perfect motion blur and you want to have that the 180-degree rule, so if you're filming in 24, 25 frames per second, you go 1/50. If you're filming in 30 frames, 1/60, 60 frames, 1/20, all the way up to whatever your desired frames per second, then that's going to be what the shutter speed needs to be. The problem that you're going to run into without having any added accessories is that you're going to set your 30 frames, your 1/60, and then the shot is going to be blown out. It's going to be too bright. That is where ND filters come in. ND filters are little lens covers for the DJI, and I say that because GoPro, you have to take off the lens and you replace the camera lens with the ND filter. What I really like about DJI's, so I'm using the Telesin ND filters for reference, the DJI, it just pushes over the existing lens cover. So you've always got your clear lens cover on the camera, so you don't have to remember to bring it as well. So that is a bonus straight away. Going inside, don't need the cover, take it off, there you go. Now because I've got the camera in auto, you can see it adjusting for me putting on the ND filter. And this is now 30 frames, 1/60. I've give the ISO bracket, so it's 1 to 6400. Obviously it's a clear blue sky. It's not gonna get above 100. And as you can tell, completely blown out. I've got an ND16 here. And there we go. Look at the difference an ND filter makes. Well guys, that is it. That is all my settings I use on the Osmo Action 4 for vlogging. If you've enjoyed it, found it useful, please give it a thumbs up, and more importantly, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned because there will be plenty more videos coming on the Action 4 and the Action 5 Pro.